Welcome to the Roberts Law Office Injury Podcast. Kentucky attorney Jeff Roberts has over 25 years of experience. He'll provide answers to your questions related to personal injury and automobile accidents, workers' compensation claims, and Social Security disability benefits. Let's join Jeff for this episode. And friends, welcome back. We are in Calloway County down in Murray, Kentucky with attorney Jeff Roberts. Jeff, how are you?
I'm doing good, Jim. How are you?
Buddy, I'm doing good. I look forward to this episode every year. This is the episode where we kind of do a public safety announcement about motorcycle safety, and you always give tips and advice about it. And we've got some data points here that I think are going to be pretty interesting and actually kind of astonishing once we actually get into them. But, I appreciate the fact that you've ridden a motorcycle for many, many years. So as an injury attorney, it's not only the kind of case you handle, but it's also the fact that you've got the actual live experience having done it for so long.
Yes, I've ridden motorcycles most of my adult life and actually rode motorcycles even before I was licensed to drive. Statute of limitations expired on that charge now, so I can admit that. And I know, how dangerous riding a motorcycle can be because of 90% of the time, at least from my experience in my practice, because of the other vehicles on the roadway not paying attention or doing something that they shouldn't have done.
Well, and I think some of the data we're going to show today kind of leads you to that conclusion as well.
Correct.
For those of you listening, I'm going to refer back to the Kentucky State Police report that comes out each year. This is the traffic collision facts, and this data is a little dated. This is the report for 2023, 2024, which is the most recent report that they've issued. It always lags a little bit, but that being said, there's some pretty good data in here to jump into. So just from an overall standpoint, and this is not specific to motorcycles, but there were 814 individuals involved in fatal traffic collisions, which is about 8% of all the collisions. And this is collisions that had occurred on public roads. To break that down a little bit further, you had 767 fatal collisions, again, 8%, and overall, 20,271 non-fatal collisions, about 4%, which is really there's just so much traffic, and you don't really think about all these accidents going on, but there are a bunch of them.
Yes, and that is, when you look at the numbers, one of the things that I thought was fairly telling, and I've mentioned this before, when you're on a motorcycle, if you're involved in any type of collision, the chances of having a serious injury or fatality are substantially greater in those, which is one of the reasons why the motorcyclists themselves need to be keeping a lookout for all the traffic ahead and coming up to them from the sides, etc., and drive or ride defensively from that, but also preach, as you know from doing these podcasts with me, preach that the people who are driving pickups and automobiles and other vehicles on the roadway need to be paying attention, especially starting this time of the year, paying attention to the motorcycles. You don't see that many motorcycles through the wintertime, and people just don't start looking for them. We're already seeing motorcycle accidents, unfortunately. But when you talk about that, the statistics there, motorcycles were involved in less than 1% of the accidents, 0.81% of the accidents in the time period that they're talking about, but they were 8% of the fatalities.
Right.
And so, even though they were a small percentage of the total accidents, they made up a much larger percentage, tenfold, of fatalities from that standpoint. And that's the reason people need to be paying attention for motorcycles when they're out on the roadway.
Right. And that's what again, another thing that I really value when we do this particular type of episode is that we're not just talking to motorcyclists. We're talking to the other drivers on the road. Because, again, a motorcyclist may be, getting out there for the first time, haven't really ridden a lot since wintertime. So, the bike's been in storage for a while. So they've still got some issues, and we'll talk about that. But also, people driving cars are just, to your point, not used to seeing the bikes back on the road.
Correct.
And for that reason, we've gotten a little lazy in our attention. Maybe we're not, we're relying on side view mirrors or rear view mirrors instead of actually turning around and looking, hey, is there somebody in my blind spot? Because that narrow profile of a motorcycle, a lot of times just don't see it, especially when you're not expecting to see it.
I want to stay on the facts for just a little bit from that standpoint, because when we talk about these accidents, and as you just mentioned, motorcycles are getting out on the roadway. When we were looking at these numbers, and in one part of the report, it talks about the different vehicles on the roadway. And taking out the big trucks weren't part of the numbers on this, but I was really surprised that the number of motorcycles registered in Kentucky was much lower than I thought there would have been, about 101,000.
About 3%, right?
Yeah, it was 3% of the total, right at 3% of the total number of vehicles registered, not counting the big commercial trucks. They weren't part of those numbers. From there, I actually was somewhat surprised. But again, you get that there are 3% of the vehicles on the roadway, and they are 8% of the fatalities on the roadway. And when you look at, because it does talk about the cause of the collisions there as well, and the one of the higher numbers that was on there is failure to yield the right of way, which is what I see a lot in motorcycle collisions. Is someone turns left in front of the motorcycle, they're not paying attention. Another one on here is inattention, and that's so you, depending on the the officer could put down, if you turn left, failure to yield the right of way, or he could put down inattention for not seeing the motorcyclist coming. I suspect both of those are to some extent kind of discussing the same thing. The operator of the motor vehicle, not the motorcycle, but the other vehicle involved, didn't say the motorcyclist for whatever
or
reason.
didn't look.
Yeah,
I mean, they
yeah.
could be just, hey, I'm going to change lanes. I'm not going to check to see if there is somebody in the adjacent lane. And,
Yes,
you get that a lot.
Yeah, and so you've got those things that make up a large percentage of the motorcycle accidents that are occurring out there, and as I've said before, if we do these about the safety of the motorcyclists from there, but the biggest thing to keep motorcyclists safe on the roadways in Kentucky is for the other drivers on the road to pay close attention and start looking for motorcyclists. And the motorcycle, one of the things on motorcycles that's been this way since as far as I can remember, anyway, is the motorcycle, when that engine is running, the headlights automatically come on. And if you're a motorcyclist, one of the things you need to do is make sure that is still occurring. It's automatic, and make sure your headlight is still working, because that is something that people who drive on the roadways in vehicles during the daytime, they're not used to seeing headlights on a lot. Now, you got a lot of vehicles now that do have driving lights that stay on and all of that, but it makes you a little more visible on that motorcycle to the people in passenger cars or trucks. If you have with that headlight, they see that even during daytime, it stands out a little more for people, to make it a little bit easier for them to see you from that standpoint. But if you drive a passenger vehicle on the roadway, keep an eye out. Start looking for motorcyclists. It's disappointing because they're out on the roadway already. We got some nice weather. Some of the best riding weather that we have right now is taking place, and you've got a lot of people who've had their bikes put up for the wintertime, and they're itching to get out there and ride again. And so you've got lots of motorcycles out on the road right now.
Well, you had mentioned the data point on inattention, and that's just over 21, almost 21.5% of all the collisions with motorcycles involved some kind of inattention. And I dare say the motorcyclist is probably paying a little bit more attention than the driver of a car. So
Exactly.
it would lead me to believe that it probably has something to do with the passenger vehicle.
And failure to yield the right of way was 24.49%, so nearly 50%, a little less than 50%, 45%. Is from that same, in my opinion, what's kind of the same thing, and cited two different ways from that standpoint. So
Right. Well, Jeff, let's talk then a little bit more about getting your bike ready, getting yourself ready as a motorcyclist. Again, the bike's probably been in storage for a while, and you're just kind of getting it out. Kind of give us the rundown. What do you recommend that people do just to kind of get ready?
Well, various things that you need to do with it. I already mentioned make sure the headlights are working, make sure your blinkers are still working, all the lights are working the way they should be working from that standpoint. Make sure your tires are in good order, aired up properly from that standpoint.
No signs of dry rot, anything like that.
Exactly. You don't
Good tread.
the tread is safe from that standpoint. Check the brakes, make sure they're functioning the way they're supposed to be functioning from there. And, they're just kind of standard things you want to make sure that the bike is going to be safe to be out on the roadway from that standpoint. I know some people don't wear a helmet. Put your helmet on when you're going to ride. It's so much safer. It's like wearing a seatbelt in the car. The numbers are very, very clear that if you're not wearing a helmet, you're much more likely to have a head trauma. From looking at the numbers, the number of folks that were injured not wearing a helmet or killed not wearing a helmet, you had 618 that were injured that were not wearing a helmet at the time. 50 of the fatalities were not wearing a helmet at the time. Unfortunately, there's quite a few who were killed in a motorcycle wreck that were wearing a helmet as well. Again, unfortunately that's most likely trauma to their body that caused them to pass away from that standpoint. But you're so much safer if you have that helmet on, and it can protect you from having at least serious brain damage from a motorcycle accident.
Well, when you start talking about, there were only 50 that died, here and there, so, it wasn't that big of a deal. Well, you've dealt with this many times because if you don't have your helmet on, and sometimes even if you do have your helmet on, if you go down, you could have serious brain trauma. And
Correct.
so, yeah, you're still alive, but the injuries can be still catastrophic. So maybe the data point leads you to believe, well, it wasn't that serious. No, your entire life has changed, and the entire life for your family has changed either way. But yeah, still, don't get lost in the numbers. Put a helmet on.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Wear the helmet. It's just your chances of surviving without brain trauma is in head injury goes up exponentially, which is the reason helmets are there.
Yeah, I think so.
From that standpoint. So those are the things there, and I know when I ride after when I haven't ridden for a few months, at least I always like to my first at least short when I first take off to go on a little short ride to get my sea legs about me, so to speak. And it's as the old saying, it's kind of like riding a bike. You don't forget how to do it, but you haven't navigated curves. You haven't had to avoid a hazard in several months, and so doing that to make sure you've got you get your skills back where they need to be before you get out on an interstate or a major roadway where vehicles are going to pull out in front of you, if you have that option. I mean, some people don't live in the community where they're able to do that. I live in a more rural area, so I can ride on a country road, and kind of break myself back in, so to speak, on riding. One other thing that you need to check is your insurance coverage. We've talked about the different types of coverage multiple times there, but there are some people that may let their coverage lapse through the wintertime because they're not riding it, or just basically cancel it. They park the bike, cancel the insurance so they don't pay premiums, or they have it as being stored during that time. And so you need to make sure your coverage is active and going. Need to check and make sure you've got good coverage on your bike from that standpoint, including the no fault or the PIP coverage that we've talked about. That's optional coverage on a motorcycle. It's not mandatory like it is in a car or a truck, but it's coverage that you want to make sure you have on your motorcycle because that's what's going to help pay your medical bills or your lost wages whenever not whenever, but if you are ever in an accident. So,
And this is something that I think catches a lot of motorcyclists off guard. Let's define this no fault or this PIP insurance again. This basically, if you're in a collision, you've got up to about $10,000 typically. The basis is roughly $10,000 to cover medical bills and some lost wages and a few other things. But that's automatic if you're in a car. It's you don't have to prove fault. It's the car you're in is going to pay that, and it's going to pay it for each of the passengers. But on a motorcycle, you don't get that automatic coverage. And that's what you were kind of saying, look at this coverage and you might want to opt in for it.
exactly. You've got mandatory coverage for a car is the 10,000 minimum of 10,000 of PIP coverage, 25,000 property damage, 25,000 bodily injury liability, 25,000 underinsured or not underinsured, uninsured motorist coverage. Those are mandatory. You can't buy a policy in Kentucky without that coverage. You may be able to waive uninsured. I'm not positive on that. I don't think you can.
And these days, I don't know why you would.
You can waive underinsured, but on a motorcycle, the PIP is not mandatory coverage, and so if you don't purchase it, you don't have it. And I know from my own purchasing of motorcycle insurance that a lot of times they will quote you without it. When I went to insure my vehicle, my motorcycle, I switched agents at one time, and first quote they gave me was it didn't have the PIP coverage, and I specifically asked them. I said, "Does this include PIP?" And they said, "No, it doesn't include PIP. Most people don't want that." And I said, "I'm not most people, and I do want it and quote it with PIP," and they did, and shopped it around actually and got me a good deal from that standpoint. But it's it was I had to let them know I wanted this coverage from that standpoint. And some will, I've had a conversation with that agent. I think they probably say, now, here's it is with this, without this, and this is what this is for, and kind of explain it to the folks so they can make a decision there. And that's, but if you're riding a motorcycle, and as I've said before, a lot of folks do not have short-term disability insurance. They have no kind of lost wages if they're out of work for whatever, for an injury or a disease. They don't have any coverage to pay them for their lost wages during that period of time. And having that PIP coverage can certainly help significantly in doing that. Now, the amount that you get in lost wages is not what it ought to be, because the PIP law was put in effect in 1977, and it hadn't been adjusted at all since then. $10,000 toward medical and lost wages in 77 was a lot of money. $10,000 now, you can go through that pretty quickly. And the lost wage cap in 77 was put in at $200, which was pretty good lost wage money back then. $200 a week now doesn't go real far, and it's people who work, they're losing a lot more than $200 a week, but $200 a week coming in is better than $0 a week coming in.
Exactly. Well, and that's when you start to think about a motorcycle collision, and if you've laid down a bike, I mean, those injuries are going to be significant. So, $10,000 in extra coverage really isn't going to go as far as you think, but it's sure nice to have it if you were to need it.
Correct. Yeah, you're exactly right. In the, when you lay down a bike, you're going to have some injuries if you're driving any speed. I still have scars from where I turned on a road that had been recently chatted without me knowing it, and the chad wasn't quite down there, so it was kind of turned on a gravel road without realizing I was turning on a gravel road, and slid out when I was about 18 years old, and I still have the scars from sliding down the roadway there. So these type of injuries can be, luckily it wasn't anything real serious because I wasn't going that fast, but these injuries, that injury there, I was still able to work, but going into work was kind of difficult when you had that road rash on your arm, and the job I had wasn't too bad, but there were some jobs I wouldn't have been able to do back then.
That makes a lot of sense. Jeff, let me ask you this. If you're a motorcyclist and you don't have the PIP coverage, I think I've heard you say this before, you're basically barred from that first $10,000, right?
Yes,
Even
yes.
if it's not your fault.
Even if it's not your fault, if you do not have that coverage, then you have, by not purchasing that coverage, you've given up the first $10,000 of your medical and/or lost wages. You cannot recover that from the at-fault driver.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I think that's the rub right there. No pun intended. But that right there is the big thing, is you're going to be automatically out $10,000, even if the accident was not your fault at all.
Correct. And I think you were saying the rub just to talk to me about my road rash. I know what you're up to. You're not fooling me.
We've done this long enough, right? But yeah, I think the personal injury protection, again, often called PIP, often called no fault, throws a lot of people. But for a motorcyclist, you're at a significant disadvantage the moment you set out on the road if you're not covered that way. And I think that surprises people.
It does. I've talked to a lot of motorcyclists who did not have PIP and explained to them, unfortunately, that your damages went down automatically $10,000 on what we can recover from the at-fault driver because you did not have that coverage. And it's, it is, and a lot of people think, well, I have it on my car. No, it doesn't work that way. Having it on your car does not cover you when you're on a motorcycle. Most, I don't know that I've ever read one that did not have this, but I try not to talk in absolutes. Most of your motor vehicle coverage on cars are going to say this does not apply to motorcycles. There's some companies that don't write motorcycle coverage. They always include that in there, but I've never seen one that didn't from that. Now, you may have one, if you've got your motorcycle and your car all on the exact same policy, then it's probably part of it, but you still need to make sure if you're on that motorcycle, the PIP's going to cover. Talk to your agent about that. Make sure you have that coverage on your vehicle, on your motorcycle.
Well, Jeff, I'm coming back to the Kentucky State Police report that we referenced at the outset here. And what I find is interesting is that in the motorcycle collisions, and this is on page 32 of the report, which is actually 32 is the actual page number on the report, alcohol involvement is just over 11% of the, this is a factor, I guess, in the motorcycle collision, and drug involvement at 13, a little bit over 13%. So you've got 24%, almost 25% of the collisions involve some type of, I guess, impairment, if you will. And that, again, if you're out on a motorcycle, you've got to be extra careful here. Now, that yes, some of that could be attributed to the person in the car, in the passenger vehicle that hit the motorcycle, but some of this could also be the motorcyclist who's maybe had a couple of extra sitting at Lake Barkley or whatever and says, hey, I got to get back. Or something like that, right?
It can be. This report does not differentiate between who had been drinking alcohol, who had used drugs, whether it was the motorcyclist or the other vehicle that was involved in the collision was doing that. So you don't know from this standpoint. Yeah, riding a motorcycle impaired is something you should not be doing. You shouldn't drive a vehicle impaired either. But in my opinion, the legal limit for on Kentucky is .08 on riding on the roadway for a car or motorcycle, either one. That's where you get the DUI level. From that standpoint, on a motorcycle, in my opinion, Frank, I don't think you should be driving at .07 in a car. In Kentucky, it's not illegal, but it's not safe. But from a motorcycle standpoint, having any alcohol in your system is going to affect your reflexes and your reaction time. And with a motorcycle, that can be very devastating to your physical health if you don't react quick enough to a vehicle turning in front of you. You may not be at fault in causing that, but if you had a little quicker reaction time, your injuries may be significantly less. So from my perspective, you don't drink anything and drive a motorcycle.
Coming back to the same chart, though, I'm looking at, one of the causes or the contributing factors being driving too fast for conditions. That was only 7% of the total collision. I mean, people tend to want to blame all this on motorcyclists, and it's just really the data doesn't necessarily indicate that. I mean, you're thinking, wow, they're always, speeding down the road. Well, just over 7% of the collisions actually were related to speed. You've got weaving in traffic, 1%. And again, part of that could have been the passenger vehicle. So some of these stereotypes that we have about motorcyclists really aren't true. And unfortunately, the blame could actually be more attributable to the passenger car simply not paying attention to the fact that, hey, I'm sharing the road with a smaller vehicle, a much smaller vehicle.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've been doing this for practicing law for more than 32 years now, and rode motorcycles longer than that. And in my experience, both in my practice and talking to people who've been injured in motorcycle collisions and in riding a motorcycle as well, luckily I've avoided having a collision with another vehicle, but it's because I've avoided it, not because they didn't turn in front of me or do something similar to that from that standpoint. But the vast majority of motorcycle collisions that I've seen and been involved in, the at-fault party was not the motorcyclist. It was the other vehicle that was involved. There have been times where the motorcyclist was driving faster than the speed limit from that standpoint, but the car still turned in front of them and should never have turned in front of them. So the vast majority of the fault, even if you want to put some of the fault on the motorcyclist for exceeding the speed limit a little bit, it's still the vehicle that turns in front of them is the one who caused the wreck, in my opinion. Is certainly the majority of the fault falls on them. And it's just been that way during my career. Very rare that I've seen the motorcyclist. In fact, I cannot think of any one off the top of my head that that I've seen where the motorcyclist was the one. There is one that I can think of where the motorcyclist was the one who was at fault. But in 32 years, one time that I can recall that the motorcyclist was the one that fought in the accident.
Yeah, and it's it's just it's amazing. We all want to tend to shift the blame to the motorcycles, but again, I guess the crux of this whole conversation is more often than not, it's probably the person in the passenger car who's making a bad decision, which is unfortunate. Now, Jeff, with personal injury, with injury law in particular, with your practice, you're licensed in Kentucky, which means actually you can represent an injured motorcyclist anywhere in the state of Kentucky. Is that right?
Correct. I can handle any car wreck case anywhere, motorcycle or whether they're motorcycle, motor vehicle. I can handle those anywhere. I'm licensed to practice in front of all courts in Commonwealth of Kentucky. And from that standpoint, and as we've mentioned before, I've got two offices. Now I've got my office in Murray, where I've been at since I started practicing in '92. I've opened up in late 2023, so a little over a year now. An office in Hopkinsville as well, so that I can service clients up in that area a little better from there. But I also have clients in Bowling Green, Louisville, Lexington area, all over from that standpoint, especially with the use, more people are used to video conferencing now from there, but we can do things. And you've got the DocuSign and all of that makes it a lot easier to represent people who are a little bit further away. But yeah, so regardless of where you're at in Kentucky, if you were injured in a motor vehicle accident, I can represent you in that claim if you wish to talk to me about that claim. And I have to travel quite a bit in my job, so if you're in Louisville, I'm going to be up there actually next week on some business, and so I will probably schedule some meeting with some of my clients up in the Louisville area so I can sit face-to-face and talk to them from that, and I do that fairly regularly when I am traveling. I try to kill more than one bird with one stone when I travel. I try to make sure I can do multiple things when I'm on that trip. So I meet with multiple clients, go to court, whatever else I need to be doing, and try to do it that way when I do have to travel. So.
Well, okay, so let me shift here just a little bit, because obviously if I've been in a motorcycle accident and maybe I'm at home or maybe I'm still in the hospital, I can pick up the phone and call you. But what happens if the motorcyclist has deceased? There's been a traffic fatality as a result of these collisions. Can you work with the family? How does that happen?
Yes, that's who I would work with in that situation. Depends on the individual facts of that family. If there's a spouse, the spouse is usually who contacts me and who I represent. That's going to be the administrator of the estate. That's who's going to pursue the claim, is the administrator of the estate. Occasionally it's someone who does not have a spouse, and then if there's parent living, it's parents or a sibling or something that handles the estate in that situation there. But that's it's the family who usually comes in, and frequently, there may be one person that is an administrator of the estate, but most of the time, not the siblings. If it's a spouse, maybe the children will come in with them, and so I've kind of represent the whole family to some extent, the decision makers, whoever's the estate. But we try, as long as the administrator of the estate is okay with it, and they nearly always are, we try to keep all the family members that want to be kept informed of what's going on from that standpoint.
That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, we've always talked about, the fact that, if you've been injured, you can call, but again, in a fatality, obviously that's not going to happen. But I just wanted to point out that the family is more than able to contact you, and you can begin working that way as well.
Yes, and I hope none of the listeners ever face that situation. But if you do face that situation, I'll be, I won't be happy to talk to you. I wish I wasn't talking to you, but I will talk with you and let you know what you're entitled to and what you can expect and things of that nature, and answer any questions that you have. If you wish to do that, then the best way to reach me, if you do want to talk to me about your case or an injury to a family member, is to call the office. The phone number, even though I have two offices, I use one phone number. It's 270-753-0053. I also have an 800 number, 1-800-844-5108. So if you want to use that, you can use that. It rings to the same phone. From that, if you call during normal business hours, you're most likely going to have a live person answer the phone and not go to a recording or anything of that nature. If I'm not able to talk with you, they'll give me a message, and we will set up a time for us to talk. So
outstanding. There's a contact us form if somebody wants to just send an email and just say, hey, here's some information. You can find that at jeffrobertslaw.com as well. And Jeff, you've got a motto that this firm works awful hard to try to live up to, and that's we deliver small town service with big city results, and you
provide small town service and deliver big city results. But
yes,
that's a motto that myself and everybody that works in my office tries to live up to. And if you go to our Google, if you go to Google and look at the reviews and what past clients have said, I think we do a pretty good job of living up to that. We try to live up to it in every case.
Outstanding. Jeff, it's been a pleasure. I'm looking forward to springtime and summertime getting underway here in Kentucky. It's just it's a great time of year, and I know there's going to be a lot of motorcyclists. I know as I head back to my office, I'll keep an eye out for motorcyclists as I head on back. But thanks for the tips. Thanks for sharing your experience and some of the practical information about motorcycle safety. It's hopefully it's helpful. And if you've listened to this podcast and you know somebody who's riding a motorcycle, feel free to share this on your social media so that other people can learn about it. Because I think, once again, it's just good common sense information, but we're just now getting into that season, so it's something that we kind of need to remind ourselves of.
Absolutely, and thank you, Jim, for coming down. Thank you to the listeners.
Thank you for listening to the Roberts Law Office Injury Podcast. Jeff will return in 2 weeks. Until then, he invites you to visit jeffrobertslaw.com and follow his firm on Facebook. At the Roberts Law Office, you'll find a history of small town service and big city results.